while I'm going to share a little bit about the topic, but I've been so inspired by the previous two speakers that I'm not really going to stick to what my slides say. I want to share something else because I really feel that this needs to be a little bit more personal, and the stories that we have from Sri Vidya and Pinky Anand are amazing because I think my story is too small in front of them. So I'm going to share a little bit about the corporate experience, and I think that's pretty much been talked about, but I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my personal story as well. So it's moving, right? Yeah. So some of the leaders, what they say about the gender balance and how important it is and why is it important. And I think we are all aware of it, and I don't think we need to really prove this again and again, that we are talking about gender balance and not diversity. And we really need that gender balance because both the genders have their own competencies and their own capabilities that they offer for any growth, any success. So some of the quotes which are here, and Patti Smith, who talks about how she feels oppressed because of her gender, and she's never really, while she's an artist, while you're a dancer, while you're a lawyer, you're not really a woman or a man. You are what your profession or your role is. And of course, there are only two genders, so where is the diversity? So it's a balance. And when at birth we have a balance, more or less, not in some states. In some states it's more, in the others it's a little less. But it's not too bad at birth, but as we go beyond that, the gender balance keeps reducing. And we know that 50% of the qualified, educated people or talent is women. There is enough research telling us that companies which are more innovative, companies which are successful, more profitable, have equity in sales and capital return, are better gender balanced. For us, because I come from the energy sector, we have very good examples of gender balance. We have very good examples of women who've done a lot of work in the energy space, so we have role models there. And while we see that men are better physiologically and have been known as hunters and challengers, women have an inherent capability to conserve, to create, and that is proving itself. What women bring to the table, we've got, and I think there is enough research saying and enough experiences saying that women are more fair, more transparent, and I'm not saying that men are not. I'm not trying to compare the two, but I'm just trying to highlight, because the topic for today is women, I'm just trying to highlight a few things which come naturally to women and which are not really acquired skills. So, they are more inclusive, and we do see when there are more men in the team, it's more competitive. And when there are more women in the team, it's just ensuring taking care of everybody, being more inclusive, giving credit to everybody, like Shalini introduced her team. And I think that's an example in itself. And all the other things which I'm not really going to go through because I want to spend a little bit more time on really sharing some stuff and my own experiences. This is something that I really want to spend a little bit time on and look at the gender ratio at literacy. We know the gender ratio at birth. We see the gender ratio at literacy, so it's more or less 50%. After that, the workforce is about 42%. Higher education is also about 40%, but what happens after that? What happens to the gender ratio after higher education? Where do those women disappear? And what is it that we need to do as individuals? What is it that we need to do as a society? What is it that we need to do as corporates, as a government, at various levels to be able to improve the gender ratio? It halves at entry level. And what happens to the gender ratio after middle management? It halves again. And again, there is need to do something at these two stages to be able to get that balance so that we do not miss out on the 50% talents or on the 50% potential that could have been utilized for growth, progress, or whatever you want. This is just some India statistics. Out of those 48% who enter the workforce, or out of the 40% or 20% who actually get into the formal sector, we have 50% coming into the BPOs, 20%, 25% in IT firms and financial sectors. But if you see some of the other sectors, they're dismal. I mean, in our sector, they're really, really dismal. And I was talking to the student here, and she mentioned that here the gender ratio is 28% at ISB. I think this must be by far the best in any of the business schools. But so what happens to the gender ratio after a particular point in time is the question that we need to ask. And what is it that we can do at all levels to be able to facilitate or help this gender balance? So what is it that we need to do as individuals? And I'm sure whatever you are is an attribute of yourself, your own ability. And I am what I want to be. And therefore, self-belief is extremely important. Ensuring that we take charge of ourselves, because I've often seen, and I got married 27 years ago, and a little bit of my story, which I'll be sharing. But again, I see my friends of that age group and my contemporaries who started to put the blame on their parents because they did not encourage them for the education. They started to put the blame on their in-laws because they did not support them or whatever, or there were higher demands from them. Started to put the blame on the spouse, on the environment, on the circumstances, everybody else but themselves. So I think taking charge of your own reality is something that I feel is very, very important. And yes, there is a glass ceiling, and I believe there is a glass ceiling, but what is it that we can do to be able to nudge that? What is it that we can do to break that? How do we create our own space? It should not be in our minds. And usually I've seen the glass ceiling is many a times in our minds. And of course, when I say gender balance, it's not about quota system. It's about no preferential system. So after some point in time, it has to be meritorious. But to make that, there has to be some opportunities that we have to create, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. At the government, more employability focus. What is it that we are doing in education? What happens after primary education? What happens to the workforce? What happens to the employability? Equal opportunity. As a society, despite the fact that there is a woman who is earning, and the society expects that if there are children, it has to be the mother who has to take that leave and not the father. There are very few companies who have paternity leaves. And even if there is a husband, in fact, we were talking about it a little while ago, that even if there is a husband who wants to help and who wants to support, there is a society at large where it expects the woman to take care of the house. If the grades of the children are falling down, it is the mother who's working, and therefore the grades are falling down. If the child is sick, it's the mother who's expected to take the leave, and it's not a balanced relationship. Family support, sensitization. In fact, I was reading a research from the US, and it is that even in the US, 20% of the women who reported that they took, they left their successful careers, said that it was because the expectation from the women was to manage the work life and there was no help provided at home. So if this can happen in the US, I'm sure in India it's much more aggravated. And of course, having positive role models. So this is where I really want to spend a little bit of time and share my own story. I got married really young. So I got married at the age of 20. I was a graduate. And after I got married into a family of academicians. And I realized, what have I done? Because it wasn't the kind of story that Sri Vidya shared with us. It wasn't any physical torture or anything of that sort. But there's a lot of subtle messages that we do not bring up and bring it to the surface. So there is, if you are educated, you're looked upon by your society, by the in-laws, by the rest of the community very differently. And if you are not very highly educated, you are perceived in a very different context. So some of the early milestones with me were that, of course, I was the eldest. I have 3 brothers, twins who are 6 years younger, and the youngest who is 7 years younger. So became responsible. So I was responsible at the age of 6 because I had almost triplets, as my younger brothers. Then it was so therefore the responsibility came to me. Father's trust in me, so my parents were abroad for some years and I was in India in a hostel, and they were coming back to India. At the age of 18, my father trusted me to buy the house for himself in which they live even today. And at the age of 18, I was going to property brokers, I was doing all of that, and I knew their lifetime investment is going to be invested in the house that they are going to live in for a very long time. So my father's trust in me helped me deliver, and of course this is one example, and then I had many more, but these were some of the milestones which really impacted me a lot. Positive disposition, I think I was just blessed. Blessed that in every opportunity I was able to see the positives. So like I shared with you, I got married at the age of 20. The option was to sit at home and be a good housewife, etc., etc. But I started to study. And I started to study initially to escape, because I got married and I had a daughter within the first 9 months. And the daughter, who's 26 now, is getting married in 3 weeks from now. But I think to escape from all of that, I started to study. So I did my master's, I did my MBA, I did my PhD. But at that time, the journey started to positively involve myself into something, because there were a lot of pressures and negative environment that was being created, because I was not as highly accomplished as the rest of my in-laws were. So there was a lot of pulling me down and my self-confidence, which I had to resurrect. And therefore, I diverted my attention into studies rather than wallowing in self-pity and getting sucked into that. And I think that helped me somewhere, because then it became my journey. By the time I did my PhD, then it was my own passion. Then it was my own journey. Then it was the subject in itself, which was so inspiring. And I was very, very lucky to have the best role models. My PhD guide was one of the best role models for me, and the kind of research that he had done, the kind of work that he had done in organization climate. There was nobody in India or the world who had done Dr. Baldev Raj Sharma and Uday Parekh. I was very fortunate to have PhD guides like them. And then, of course, I started to create my own space. And then, success breeds success. Then you do something well, you get recognized, you get reinforced, and you do something else, and then it builds. Discovering my strengths and leveraging the same. And I think this is something that started to come. What is it that is naturally coming to me? And I am what I am because of the choices that I made. I never wanted to put the blame, or never had the tendency to rationalize or justify justify or intellectualize. So many of your friends keep saying that my husband is this, or my in-laws are this, or my boss is this. So I've been very blessed that I had the best boss and I had the most incompetent boss. And why I'm saying blessed, and I want to share this experience with you. When I had the most competent boss, I was learning from his experiences of how he dealt with the union. So I'm talking my HR topics, right? How he dealt with the union, how he dealt with the employees, how he grew the organization, how he built leadership, how he did various things. But when I had the most incompetent boss, everything ended up on my plate. I ended up doing roles which would not have come to me at that stage in life. And I think I was blessed to have the most incompetent boss, because those were the 3 years I grew really, really fast. And I was on the board, and I was presenting papers to the PLC board and India board and various places. So I think the positive disposition really helped, and discovering my strengths. And that's what I really want some of the women here to really have, is that yes, I see your message. And the message that I really want all of us to carry from here is, you are what you choose to be. We must have more men represented in such forums, and it should not be represented only by women, because it is about gender balance. And if women are the key, men are the lock who will create that space to be able to help and support that environment and leverage from that. Thank you.